afternoon Sunday meeting, we're going to be studying Numbers. Not the book of Numbers, but Hebrew Numbers.
Yeah.
There's such a huge thing to learn from that.
It's not ready yet, Jim.
Oh, it isn't.
You're
Okay.
gonna still have to wait.
Yeah, you got to
Tell me about Aleph.
Okay. There's what's called cardinal numbers and ordinal numbers. You know what they are.
Right.
What's the difference between cardinal numbers and ordinal numbers?
Well, ordinal is showing order, and
Okay.
cardinal is just the number itself.
That's right, exactly. And when it says God is one, it uses the word echad. That means one. That's a Hebrew word that means one. There's another number, another word.
I thought Aleph was one.
Well, the numerical value of Aleph is one.
Okay.
But Aleph doesn't mean one. It
Okay.
just doesn't know what it means. Echad means one.
So that's the order of it.
No, that is a cardinal number.
Okay.
It's just like, say, one. And then
If you
it pushes the question, one what?
yeah,
You know.
there's another word, reshon. Reshon. Reshon means the first. What we call Sunday is called the first day of the week.
Right.
So in Hebrew it's Yom means the day, Rishon means the first day. But by implication, if there is a first day, then what?
There's
There's a second.
There must be a second day. So every word in every day in Hebrew, instead of our day like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they say day for the first day, the second day, the third day, and so on. That's what they call it. Those are ordinal numbers. If you say, my friend lives at the third house on the block, then how many houses are on that block?
At least 3.
Well, but how many are on that block?
You don't know.
You don't know.
Why
There
at
could be
least 3?
Yeah.
there could be 10
Yeah.
houses.
Why at least 3?
Well, because you had the 1 and the 2 and the 3.
Because this is the third one, so we know there's got to be 3.
Oh, I thought
But
you
there
said
could-
if there's it's the first house on this block.
No, he said the 3rd.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Oh,
To
okay.
answer
That's-
before listening is not good. So I'm trying to tell you this.
I didn't hear it.
Okay.
I want to. If I can't hear something, I can't
Okay.
get into it, right?
The
The
importance of
third,
sound.
if we say the third house, then you know there's got to be at least
2 more.
3 because to get the third, you got to pass 1 and
Okay,
2.
I got it.
But that does not tell you how many houses. There could be 10 houses on the block.
Right.
But if you say there are 3 houses on that block, then how many houses are on that block?
3.
3.
3 only.
That because 3 is a cardinal number, but third is an ordinal number. God is not the first God. If he were the first God, then there would be a second God. And if there's a second God, there'd be a third. How many gods would there be? But in the idolatrous world, there are thousands of gods. But God is not the first God. He is the one God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if he says there's the one God, then how many gods are there?
There's only one.
There's only one. If you said he is the first God, there could be thousands of them. So you go back to Genesis chapter 1, which is the beginning of creation. And in each of the stages of creation, it would say the second day was thus ended the second day, or thus ended the third day. Now in our English translation, and remember the very word I say English translation, a red flag should go up, which means there's danger. In the English translation of Genesis 1, it says the beginning and the end of the first day. Now, by implication, if there's a first day, then there would be a second day, and so on. But in the Hebrew, it does not say the first day. It says day one. Day one. Because what was day one that none of the other days were?
He made the heavens and the earth.
Well, day one is the beginning.
Okay.
How many beginnings can you have?
One.
Just one.
Because once something's begun, there can't be another beginning.
Right.
It's just so day one in the Hebrew it would say echad yom or yom echad. If it said yom reshon, that's the name of the first day of the week. That means the first day. Now, the first day of the week, which we call Sunday, that's a pagan name, but Yom Rishon means the first day. That's not the one day because every week we get another first day. We get 52 of them a year, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of first days, but there's only one beginning day, and that is Yom Echad. Okay? So when you think of that word echad, it says one, and it means there's only one. We read, the Lord our God is one Lord. Is that there's one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one this, one that. He created man and woman, he made of the two one. So oneness represents God. But first, lots of things are first things, you know. God, we need to be very careful. The beginning day of creation was not the first day. It is the one day. Now later on, the Lord says there's going to be another day, a unique day. What's a unique day?
There's only one.
There's only one. But he calls it the day of the Lord. And he refers to it many times in Scripture as on that day, this and that will happen. And it refers to the final. So in the last day of the Lord is a repetition of the first day. It is the one day. There, and he says it'll be a day like no other. There won't be either night or day. It'll be many things about that day that will never be done again, that never is done before. It is the one day. So when the Lord says, I am the Aleph and the Tav, in Greek, of course, it says, I am the Alpha and Omega, which is a translation from Hebrew. I am the beginning and I am the end. So he is the Yom Day which began, and he is the Yom Day that finishes it. Both of them are single, only one of each, you see. This is not the first day of the creation, and this is not the first day of the final things. When that day comes, he said there's no other day like that, because there's only one of them. And all that is in the idea that Aleph represents God, the one. There's much more than that, but that's a start. So what the world can't realize, you know, one of the concepts the world has is it doesn't matter what you believe as long as you're sincere. Well, how many beliefs are there?
There are
Thousands. They're just like each belief is an ordinal number. There's number one belief, number two belief, number three, and number 10,000, and number 50,000.
Yeah.
On and on and on they go. But how many truths are there? How many truths are there?
One.
Yeah. The Lord didn't
The
say,
truth,
I am a
the
way, I am a truth, and I am a life. That would be a ordinal number. But he says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. Anytime you use the word the, you get a cardinal number, the one. So that's why they keep praying the Shema. Remember, our God is one. The minute you made him an ordinal number, you get into idolatry. And it's true of all these things. Salvation is not a salvation, it is the salvation, see? And that's why I say, if we recognize that, then that letter Aleph, which is the one, the numerical value of one, is a representative of God Himself, and so.
You know, I was thinking about something along the lines of singles and multiples when you think about two things. Both sin and love have multiple ways of manifesting themselves. So, you know, when the condemnation is you shouldn't sin, you know, what is sin? How many ways can you sin? You can sin. You know, that's one of the things that Yeshua did is, you know, people thought that sins were only things that you did with your hands or your feet or your other body parts. But he said, yeah, but you can also sin with your heart and your mind and your thoughts. And then...
What do you need?
Maybe a fork. You got a fork? Kind of hard to eat these sticky things with just fingers.
They are sticky.
Go ahead, though. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And then love is even more grand because, and that brings us into how we live in, you know, in view of God, because how many ways can you love? There's countless ways to love, and that's good news right there. That's the good news side of things.
You know what the Hebrew word for love is?
I can't remember.
Ahhav.
Ahhav, yeah.
Okay. The Hebrew word for one.
Aleph.
Echad.
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 It's a sound.
Yeah,
And it's
echad.
usually only 3 syllables.
Okay.
Normally. Yeah.
It's spelled Aleph, He, Dalet. That's how that word is spelled. This is important. Echad, you know, every letter has a numerical value. If you take the letters in echad, they add up to 13.
Oh, yeah.
Ahhav, you take the letters of Ahhav and they add up to 13.
How about that?
So you join echad with Ahhav. Each one is 13. The total
26.
number is 26. All right, now just think about that. When you join love to echad, you come up with 26. God's title or name is Yud-He Vav-He. You add up the letters or the numbers of Yud-He Vav-He, you get 26. So when you join echad to Ahhav, in other words, joining the number one with love, you get the name of God.
How about that?
And, you know, somebody, just a coincidence. No, it's not a coincidence. The Lord built those numbers in there for a purpose.
I believe you're right.
And there's a lot of other things that are 26. 26 is an important number.
No.
The 26th verse of the Bible, Genesis 1:26, is something about God says, let's make man in our image. So He wants to share what He is with people. Well, what is He? He is love joined with the one. So what is a true relationship with God is when through His love we are joined with the one.
How about that?
That's all in echad and in Aleph. It just keeps on going. There's no end to that.
Have you ever seen somebody draw an Aleph and make the same point?
Yes.
Yeah, because an Aleph, you know, is like a slash with a
Yud
Yud
on the top
on
and
either
the bottom.
side. Yeah.
I'm going to have some handouts, and there is one picture of that. But go ahead.
Yeah,
What are you going to say
it's-
about that?
The idea is that the Yud of God has reached down to the Yud of man.
Yep. What's Yud mean?
Hand.
A hand.
A hand. Oh.
Okay. Now the Vav is the slash mark, and a Vav is a connecting peg. A Vav means to join two things together. It's also used as a vowel, but that's what the letter means. So you have one hand that reaches up toward heaven or toward the top, and one that reaches down. So the hand of God that reaches down to us enables us to reach up to God, or God's hand up there reaches down to us, and it all goes together. So Aleph
Just
is
like the creation.
Aleph
thing
is a
that
picture of
Michelangelo.
the hands of God, or the hands. Everything we do is done with our hands. You think about it. You can't even talk without using your hands. You can't. How could you drink that if your hands don't work? You can't have a cup of coffee. You can't eat a muffin. You can't do your work. The hands represent your means of doing anything. So,
The
Psalm
handiwork of God.
Psalm 19 says, "The heavens declare the handwork of God." Now, the heavens are not the handwork. They are, you could say, they are the works of His hands, or they are works of His hands. But the handwork of God, what is the most important handwork that the Lord ever did? The most
Died on the
important.
cross.
Yes. Making the heavens is fine. That's wonderful. But what does that do for us if it weren't for the
If he's not
atoning work?
connected to us with
Yes.
the peg.
So the handwork, even a crucifixion is almost like a picture of the Aleph. It's a hand over here with a slash between, or a dividing line. So a crucifixion is a hand there, and the life of the one in the middle being laid down, But that laid down life connects this hand with that hand. And so even that is a picture of Aleph, the letter, see? Now realize, in the ancient times, before they had what's called square script, this figure that we see is called square. That was introduced a little later than the beginning. At the time of King David, they used what was called pictorial script.
Mm-hmm.
And the Aleph was pictured as a sketch of looking like the head of an ox.
Did you know that almost all languages are the same way? Chinese and Japanese?
Well, sure.
They drew little
still
pictures
are,
and
yeah.
then it turned into
Yeah.
a character.
Yeah.
Chinese
And-
especially.
And of course, Aleph, the word Aleph means the head of an ox. That's what the word means. Aleph is ox head. So if a wagon were coming down the road being drawn by an ox, what comes first?
Ox.
The ox head. He reaches out. So where does the wagon go?
Wherever the ox goes.
Wherever the ox go. Where does the ox go? Wherever the head leads it. So Aleph represents the head of the ox, which is the leader of everything. There again, you have a picture of God. He is the leader. He is the head. And if anything operates, if a wagon is going down a hill and there's no ox, where's it going? It's going to disaster.
Yeah,
I mean, wagons can roll away by themselves, but if they do, they're going to crash. And so, without the ox and the ox head, then the wagon can't do a reasonable work. It's useless. So all those things, they just keep picturing and all that. So when they say the Shema, they're being reminded that everything in life depends on that one God. The Lord our God is one Lord. And then it goes on to, you shall love Him with all your heart and soul, and you'll teach it to your children and everything else. Now, where it breaks down is that here's the truth, which is Aleph. The Lord our God is one. What happens if they forget that? They're going to teach their children something. What are they going to teach them? If they forget the Lord our God is one Lord, what are they going to teach their children?
Worldly stuff.
Worldly stuff.
Well,
And
not
it'll
smart.
always be idolatry of some form. Everything in the world without God becomes an idol, doesn't it? It doesn't matter.
It's amazing when you think about the Israelites living in Egypt for 400 years. They lost track of.
They forgot who God is, yes.
Yeah.
So when Moses went down there, their question, well, he says, God sent me to you. What God?
Yeah.
There are thousands of God. So all they've heard about for 400 years is all these thousands of gods of Egypt. Which God? And then he says something very interesting.
I am.
Well, he starts off by saying, the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knew who God is, but they forgot all that. So, for 400 years, they forgot all about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, but it was there. It was in their teaching. You know, the Pharisees, they knew all this stuff. Mentally, they knew it. They could answer every question, but in the heart, they forgot it all. So, it, instead of becoming reality and truth to them, it just became vain tradition, you know. Yeah, we know all about that. We have our feast days. What are all the feast days about? They're to tell us who God is. We do the feasts.
So we don't forget.
We do them all, but we still forget because we start looking at them as nothing but a religious ritual. You know, we talked about Proverbs 7 a few times ago about this woman that came out to meet the foolish young man. It says she's dressed like a prostitute. She's not a prostitute, but she's dressed like one. So what does she look like?
Alluring.
Yeah, what does she look like? She looks like a prostitute. And of course, now she's religious too. She has gone to the temple and presented a fellowship offering. What's the purpose of a fellowship offering?
It's an offering to the Lord.
For what purpose?
Well, I don't know what a fellowship, but there's sin offerings. There's all kinds of offerings.
Okay, they all have one purpose. What is the purpose?
I'm not sure.
Get good with God.
Remember, listen, Israel, our God is one God.
To know who God is.
Every feast, every Sabbath, every feast day, every offering is to remember that God is one. Because the opposite of that is there are many gods, and it's all idolatry. So she made her offerings to God. In truth, they would be offerings to recognize who God is. But why did she make those offerings? Why did she do it?
It's probably a tradition.
Religious.
Yeah. Well, what does she expect to get for doing it? I mean, you
God's
want,
favor, maybe?
She did it for show.
for
right?
show. Yes.
Because
What show what? What does she want everyone to see?
How
that
righteous.
she's a good
right.
girl. you know?
Exactly. Why did the Pharisees stand on the street corners praying long, lengthy prayers? Why did they wear long shawls with long, extra long tassels and extra big
Phylacteries.
phylacteries?
Yeah.
All that show business because they want the approval of the world.
Yeah.
That's why she made her fellowship offering. Now she has some, when you make an offering, God doesn't eat your bread that you offer or whatever. It's just a small part of it is actually put on the altar to symbolize your offering, but you can take a lot of it back home.
Explain that, because you said that the other day, and I didn't really captivate that.
Well,
So when the offering is brought to the temple, how is it divided up? I thought you just left it and walked away.
depends on what it is.
Okay, but
Some offerings, they had what's called a wave offering.
Mm-hmm.
You literally just hold up a piece of bread and you wave it like, okay, Lord, this is yours. Well, then what happens to that piece of bread?
you eat it.
You eat it. So
What's a fellowship offering? That's I don't.
I'm not really sure exactly how they did that, but you think of the word fellowship, it's a means of us relating to
Yeah,
God.
it's like
as
handing out food to everyone.
Yeah.
We're fellowshipping.
Yeah.
But it's a joining together of our minds and our thoughts and our attitudes and bringing us together to become one with the other. So a fellowship offering is really literally, I want to be in God's presence. I want to enjoy His friendship. I want to know Him. I want to be part of Him, and so on. But whatever it was, whatever kind of food it was, likely just bread, she had some
I
left
think
over.
a fellowship offering would be, in our times, a potluck.
It could be, yeah, and
So
that's
people
what,
bring a bunch of
yeah.
food.
But
Like you might bring bread, but you might take meat and bread away. Or,
But remember this: if it isn't relating to God,
Right.
it'll become idolatry.
Right.
Many people, even church groups, will have fellowship offerings, but their interest is in themselves and in what they're doing, and it's very easy to forget it's all about God. And that's the danger. The enemy is always there to draw you off. This woman, who was dressed like a prostitute, she says to this silly young guy, called him a man who had no sense.
Yep.
In other words, stupid. He's going down the road. Where's he going? Where does he think he's going? He has no sense.
He didn't have it.
He don't know where he's going. He's just going down the road because he's a stupid guy. But he's going down near her house, and she comes running out, and she said something very important to him. She said, "I looked for you, and I found you." Does she know who he is? Does he know who she is? What's going on here? That she looked for him, and now she's found him.
It says here, this guy's telling a story, right? He's teaching his sons what to look out for. It says, "I saw among the simple, I noticed among them young men." So when you're young, you're more simple.
Yeah.
You're not as wise.
Also, you're more inclined to
A youth who
respond
had
to the
no
lure.
a youth who had no sense.
Mm-hmm.
He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house at twilight, as the day was fading, as the dark of night set in.
Okay, that's
That
important
sort of
too.
paints a really
Yeah.
good picture.
Darkness is coming.
Yeah,
What's darkness?
Absence of light.
yeah.
Well,
But the light's the truth, the darkness is where evil men.
yeah, the light is wisdom, understanding.
yeah.
We say, enlighten me, mean tell me what it's all about. But darkness symbolizes ignorance and unbelief and stupidity. There's nothing evil about being dark, but it's a picture of there's no understanding, and that's exactly where he was. And it doesn't say it was dark; it said it was becoming dark. The darkness was closing down. It slowly gets dark. Go on now. Go ahead and read it.
Well,
So what does she say?
let me go back because we sort of lose track. So here's the father trying to tell his sons, or maybe a group of boys, maybe not all his sons. He says, "Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and to insight, you are my relative." So keep those close to you. So wisdom and insight. But it says they will keep you from the adulterous woman, from the wayward woman with her seductive words.
Yes.
So that's like that's like 4 and 5 sort of tells. And then he talks about the darkness and then it says, "Then out came a woman to meet him." There's the lure. Dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent.
Yeah.
So she had intent. She's just not standing out there dressed
No.
seductively.
She has a plan.
She wants him.
And crafty means you have made a plan. You're
Yeah.
It's cleverly done. It's not
Yeah.
stupid. It's smart. The very word crafty implies something kind of evil.
Yeah.
Because you don't use that to mean something very clever and wise. You think of it as like a evil plan or a plot.
Russians use the word hitri, and it's
Hitri?
hitri. Yeah,
Which is
it's the only. You know how we say sly like a fox?
yeah.
It's their word for a fox.
Okay.
Okay.
It does mean the animal, or
No,
sly, a person
it-
being
when-
sly like a fox.
When they use the word sly like a fox, it's their word for sly.
Okay. All right.
Well, sly. What does sly mean? It means you're smart.
Slippery and
Yeah.
smart and
It means you're smart and
crafty
you got
They're
a
always calculating.
good idea, but
Constantly
there's an evil
calculating.
plan involved. It's
Yeah.
a way to trick somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trickster.
Yeah.
The Joker.
Yeah.
So this is, in this version, verse 11 and 12 are in parentheses.
Okay.
So it goes, where it went over. She is unruly and defiant. Her feet never stay at home. So that tells us more about this woman. She's dressed like a prostitute, but she's not. He's comparing her to an adulteress type woman.
Yeah.
And now she's unruly and defiant.
So
Now,
for just a minute,
yes,
the word defiant. What does that mean?
defies authority. It's
rebellion against God.
She's rebelling
Yeah.
against the one thing that she should be. Well, there's two things. In Colossians we read, wives, be submitted to your husband.
but not the husband. It's a
Okay,
spiritual husband to the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
she mentioned her husband.
Yep. Well, later on, he's gone with lots of money.
So what
Won't be
about
home
this?
for-
What about her attitude toward her husband?
She's defiant.
Yeah,
Defiant.
to him.
I don't care what he thinks or what he says.
Yeah,
He's
he's
gone
right.
off someplace, and while he's gone, I'm going to do what I want to
Right.
do. What she should be doing, if everything was right, and if he was right, she would be respectful of what it was he wanted for her. Now, she mentioned she never stays at home.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that the wife can't go anywhere,
Yeah.
but her focus of her purpose is to take care of the needs of her home and her household.
But she's out
If she
looking
was,
after her own
if she was,
needs.
if she were submitted to her husband, he would say, "While I'm gone, you take care of the house and the home and the children or whatever."
right.
But she's never home. What's she doing? She's out running around in defiance of her husband to satisfy her own hedonism. And of course, that's just a figurative. But go ahead. What else?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Like, this came to my mind earlier, but I didn't say it. But something that I see in her is that it's all about appearances. It's all about what's on the outside.
Mhm.
Because she looks like a prostitute, but that's not who she is. And she took her offering in, but it really wasn't a fellowship offer to the Lord.
Yep.
And
She has a husband that she resents, and
Defiant too.
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah.
And then the young man, he's counting on what he sees with his eyes, but they are deceptive because she's presenting something that's different than that.
Yeah, and everything that she shows outwardly looks good.
It looks good.
You know, there's another
Yeah.
problem. It says, there's a way that seems right, but it leads to death. That's exactly, everything to him seemed right. Now, the key, another key to it is the fact that he has no sense.
Yeah.
That means he has no ability to make a wise judgment. He looks at her, everything looks fine. He's walking into a trap. Go ahead.
And
Well,
wisdom cuts through what you see.
Wisdom
with
would
your
say, "Hey,
eyes.
wait, don't go there. That's dangerous."
Yeah.
But he
Wisdom
doesn't
is
have
like
any.
your sister, so
Yeah, yeah,
and insight's like my relative.
yeah.
And the thing you said about the faithful wife, it's interesting that you go to the end of Proverbs.
31.
Proverbs
That's the
31
faithful
is
wife.
the woman who stays home
Yeah.
and takes care of the house,
Yeah.
even if the husband is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like the final peg
Yeah.
of because what we're really talking about here is the faithfulness of God being the husband, and our role is the wife taking
Bride.
care of the
Yeah.
Now,
house.
the Lord refers to his people as his wife or his bride. And that's why that proverb has nothing to do with prostitution or anything. It's about the religious system that claims to be everything they should be.
On
And
the
yet,
outside, it
on
looks
the hour
good.
they look
Yeah.
like it, but the heart attitude is really to serve selfish interests. Now, another thing, when she says to this guy, "I found you," and what does she tell him to do?
Come with me.
Come to my place. Come
Yeah.
to my house. What does every religious system say to everybody?
Come to my house.
Come to our house.
Come in.
The
Come
Lord-
into my house.
It's good here.
In what we call the Great Commission, the Lord sending his disciples, he never tells them to invite anyone to come to him. He says, "You go out to them and take the truth to them. Does he ever tell them, invite them to come to your house? Not one place does he say that. But the world's religion all says that, don't they?
Well, here's something. Jesus didn't have a house when he was a kid.
That's right.
But when he was on his mission, he always spent time in
Yeah.
other people's houses.
Well, when two of John the Baptist's disciples followed the Lord after John said, "There's the Lord, that
Yeah.
the Lamb that takes away sin," they followed him. Their first question to him was, "Where do you stay?" And he says, "Come and see." Now, he did not go to them and say, "You come to my," but they asked him, "Where is it?" And he said, "Well, come along, I'll show you." And of course, like you say, he doesn't have a house.
Mm-hmm.
He lives wherever people are. Why does he live where people are?
He didn't have any belongings.
Well, that's not why he does it.
No, but
'Cause
I
he
mean,
loves
he
them.
didn't have a house. He didn't have belongings.
Well, the reason he goes where people are is because they need him. He
Yeah.
goes where they are.
Yeah.
He never tells them, "You come to where I am." He says, "I will go to where you are." And what does he do when he gets to where they are? What does
Speaks
he do?
the truth.
Gives them what they need.
He gives them what they need, which is life and hope and salvation. And so, but the false system always says, "You come to us." Now they have musical instruments, they
Yeah.
have light shows, they have beautiful stained glass windows, they have comfortable pews. Why do they have all this stuff?
It lures you
To
in.
make the people feel good about coming there. And of course, then they have to pass the plate around for donations because they've got to pay for all this stuff, which is very expensive.
Yeah.
You know, when the Lord went out to meet the people's need, did he ever take up a collection from them? Why not? He said,
He
whatever
didn't
the
need it.
expense is, I pay that.
Just half.
He said, I'm not asking you to pay for anything. You come to me, I've paid all the price for everything.
You're doing a lot of talking and not much drinking.
Can you see how the religious system just goes the opposite direction from everything the Lord is doing? And so this woman that met this foolish young guy, she invites him to her house. Well, in fact, she didn't just invite him. She included a whole bunch of very promising things. She talked about fellowship offerings. She's dressed in an alluring manner. She says, my bed's is covered with colored linens. It's perfumed. And we read in Psalm, I think 69, it says, all your robes are fragrant with aloes and cinnamon. And she said, my bed is fragrant with aloes and cinnamon.
Yep. And myrrh.
So the Lord's lure, or the shall say lure, the thing that's beautiful about the Lord is he is perfumed like a king should be. And so that means when you go into the presence of the Lord, you get wonderful pleasure for being there. But she said, my bed is covered, or is fragrant with aloes and cinnamon. So she's saying, what I'm offering you is the same thing that the king should be honored with. So she's using the king's fragrance for her own selfish interests. And you can see the religious system does that. It uses what should be honored to the king for their own selfish interests. And so in the end, it all comes out. The young man, he says, he goes to her like an ox going to the slaughter. So all that is a warning to the Lord's people, you know. And it keeps coming back to Aleph. The Lord our God is one Lord. Don't forget that. Say it every morning, every night. When a child is born, pray it. When he's dying, pray it. Keep that right at the head of every thought. The Lord our God is one.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So here,
Yeah.
this foolish young man of course it's all a parable. That's not an actual story of anything. It's just a parable. But what did he think about God being one?
He was simple. He didn't.
He had no thought at all about that. He's just going. He doesn't
He's
even know
like
where
an
he's
ox
going.
being led around.
He's just going down the road. Has no idea where he's going. And when she came out, everything that happened after that was her doing. She ran the show, didn't she?
So here, when it says, she never stays at home, now in the street and now in the square.
At every corner.
At every corner, she lurks.
What's it?
What's lurking?
Yeah,
Lurking.
yeah.
Sort of like, you know,
Hiding,
like
yeah.
slightly,
Fox.
yeah.
But
And
you
then-
know,
And then it says, she took hold of him and kissed him, and with a brazen face she said, and this is, today I have fulfilled my vows, and I have food for my from my fellowship offering at home. So I came out to meet you. I looked for you and have found you. So that's she looked, she found, now she wants to bring back.
another thing too, when she says, I looked for you and I found you, what does he think?
He's special.
I'm special.
Wow,
Yeah.
I'm important. So her lure, the first thing of her lure is to flattery.
Yeah.
Flattery means you are important.
Yeah.
And there's another proverb about a flattering tongue.
Yeah.
So when she says something that makes him boosted up by that, that's one thing. How many times advertisements for products say, you deserve this
special.
product? Why do they say that?
They want you to feel special, like you deserve it. Like,
And not only
I'm
that,
gonna go buy that.
that's for people like me. So
Yeah.
I'm so big and important, I got to have that. So that's a flattering tongue, and that's exactly what she laid on him, see?
This is off subject slightly, but I just, when thoughts pop in your mind.
Yeah.
Think of the world now. I think about all the Gucci and Versace and all that stuff that the whole world was into. Hollywood, was boasting all their dresses and this and that. That has all come to an end. The things that were so plentiful on the shelves are dwindling and they're harder to find.
Yeah.
It's almost like God's preparing us for something. Coming out of the world and into the basic needs and what's really important. I just saw that. It was like, here's the prostitute of society and the world is out there luring you in. You need this. You're special. But all that, even look at the advertising. It's changed. The whole world it's different.
Years ago, we were part of a church group in San Diego, and one of their slogans was that God wants your time, your talents, and your treasure. Now, they thought that sounds pretty nice. Which part of your treasure does God need? How much of your time?
It's his anyway.
How much of your time does He need?
Doesn't need.
How much of your talent does God need? Is God lacking in talent? If you don't give Him your talent, then He won't be good enough.
No.
It's all about what you are. God doesn't need any of that. The opposite is you need what He is.
You need
But
to-go
this
cups.
church program was God needs what you
Somebody
got.
out there.
Huh?
What's the matter?
There's somebody out there.
To go cups.
A to-go cup.
I don't have any paper cups.
Oh.
So, all this parable about that woman that came out, why did He put all that in there anyway? What's the point of it?
I think
Something I'm hearing is, the whole seek thing. The essence of God's relationship with us is seek me and you'll find me.
yeah.
And so
Knock and the door will open.
yeah, and
Well, that's all true, but why did he put it in there? Don't you already know that? So why did you put it in there?
so that we'll know He's one.
I already know that. I've read it twice. Why is it? Why is it?
It says, "Now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay
Okay,
attention
stop right
to what
there.
I say."
Shema.
Listen. Why? Why did you say listen?
Because here's the the story, the lure, what he's doing. He's being led like an ox to slaughter.
I already knew that. Why does
But
he
this
keep
simple-
saying, listen?
This simple boy, man, the young person didn't know that. He
Well,
was
I
simple.
know it.
Well,
Do I need that? I already know that. Do I need to read that again?
Yes.
Why?
So you don't
Remember.
forget.
I forget so quickly. That's exactly it. When he says, remember. You know, the Apostle Paul wrote to Timothy, remember your Creator. He said that.
The next verse says, "Do not let your heart turn to her ways,
If your
or
heart turns to
stray
her ways,
into her paths."
what will happen if you let your heart turn
Death.
that way? You'll forget the truth, and you'll
You'll
start
get hit
focusing
in the
on what
liver.
Yeah.
you'll start focusing
That's
on
what
what
it says, right?
she offers. Does that mean if you go that way, you're going to lose your salvation?
No.
Oh yeah. Earlier it says, all at once he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose till an arrow pierces his liver,
Yep.
like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life.
I got something on liver. All right. So, what is the liver, and what does it do
Purifies
for
It's
your
you?
a
blood.
purifying plant.
It purifies you. Have you ever? Now this is a weird question because only in our day and age could you probably say this, but have you ever felt a liver?
Mm-hmm.
What's it like?
It's a mass of tissue that's soft and pliable.
It's mass.
Yeah.
Though, right?
Right. And the structure's not like meat. It's not set up like meat with fibers in it.
Right.
It's not a muscle.
It's but you said the word mass.
Yeah.
Mass is heavy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a
Full
measurement
of blood,
heavy.
isn't it?
Well,
or whatever.
but the liver is also
Blood goes through there and is purified.
yeah,
And
and
the toxins are
and
taken
it's
out.
it's an unusual organ, and you can't live without it. If something happens to the liver, it actually can repair itself.
Yes.
It's one of
It
the
grow, yep.
yeah.
The very few organ that will grow back.
And so here in this passage, he's struck in the liver. Now, the liver is
Was a
a life-giving organ.
the
in
heart
a way.
and the liver are some of the organs that are praised and prized. The alpha wolf will eat those organs first, and then everybody else has other meats.
And the liver, if you get hit in the liver, you're gonna die. Eventually, you're gonna die. That's something you can't really recover from. So the massiveness of it is what? When it's connected to the word or to God. Now it does have a connection with God because of its mass. Because when you look at what is it, 2 Corinthians 3 maybe, there's a weight to glory. The word liver is connected to glory. And so what is the mass of God? Right? Have you ever thought about that? But he's heavy. God is heavy. He's the stuff of God.
It says the Lord holds everything together.
Yeah. And so that's God. And his glory is what? It's untold glory. You know, we don't even understand the weight of God.
Stoops down to look at the stars.
And so I'll try to send you guys an article on it, but man, it is such a good thought that there's a life connection to liver, and there's also okay, so how is it tied into sex though? Because that's the interest, that that's the lure right there, is if he takes the bait, he's gonna get hit in the liver. And,
Right,
and
okay.
and there's a connection with the
Because
passion.
a hunter will not shoot for the liver.
Right.
A hunter will shoot for the lungs mostly, You pierce the lung, they fill with blood, and they stop breathing, they fall over. Or a heart shot, but it's the heart-lung issue. And if you ever could sever the spinal cord, then they can't walk or whatever.
Drop, yeah.
So a liver shot would not be very good because that deer would
He would
run
die.
a long ways and you'd have to follow it.
But
blood trail.
But his
But
his
if it's-
glory has been taken away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
His glory
He's
has been
injured.
taken
If
away.
you get shot in your liver, there is no glory. You're injured. You're weak.
Yeah.
You're like
Yeah.
going to death.
takes the glory away from
Yeah,
him.
I can
and
see that.
So there's a connection.
Yeah.
Go back to it's a parable though.
Yeah.
He says he does things like a deer. He is not a deer, and he's not walking into a deer trap.
And he's not an ox.
He's not an ox.
And he's
but
not
he-
a bird
Yeah.
darting
But
in the
he's
snare.
doing things like that. So the idea of a hunter going after a deer or a trap would be a parable of what that is. So
She's
everything in a
seducing
parable,
him with her smooth talk,
yeah,
and it's like those
Yeah.
animals
yeah.
going at the end of
So-
their life.
Typical Hebrew way of speaking, he puts things in a thing you can visualize. Now, all early Hebrews hunted, most of them. That's
Yeah.
how they got their food a lot of times. So they know what a deer going into a noose would do, and so on. So he puts it in a way. You see this when you go hunting or when you trap an animal. Well, that's the same thing was happened to this guy, like that. Now, of course, this guy represents false things of all religious systems. Each parable talks about what the other one is, and that talks about the other, and it comes up to this. They all forget who God is what it comes down to. And then the substitute, if you don't know who God is, or forget that, you're created as a worshiper. You're going to worship. Everybody in the world is a worshiper. Everybody. There are no atheists. They're atheists, but atheists are worshipers. Everyone worship. The only issue is who is going to be God.
Or who are you going to worship?
Well, yeah.
There's only one God.
There's only one.
But you
so
can
if
worship
ignore,
other things.
If you ignore the
pagan,
one,
yeah.
you're going to worship. You're going to
Yeah.
worship something.
Yeah.
So what are you going to worship? Well, there's plenty of things that you can worship. You can worship your job. You can worship your family. You can worship the Bible. You can worship a church. You can worship education, or you can worship military power, or whatever you want to worship. You're going to worship. So you're going to worship angels. That's what the Gnostics thought. Or you're going to worship Judaism. You're going to worship America. You're going to worship the Republican Party. You're going to worship something. And what you worship what do you bow down to? And everybody's going to do it. Everybody is a worshiper. There are no non-worshipers. Or you can just worship yourself. But whatever it is you worship will be outside of the truth, because there's only one God. So they tell them over, and don't forget this. Our God is one. Everything is not him is idol. And so that parable is there because the Lord's people tend to forget. Now, he's not saying that if you go into the religious system that you're going to lose your life or your salvation. But the word life here doesn't mean he stops existing, but he stops living real. The Lord says, I've come to give you life. Well, I'm already alive, so I don't need for him to give me any, because my problem is I don't know what life really is. Life means existing in the world and doing all these things you want. That's what life is. The Lord says, no, that's not what life is. I've come to give you life more abundant. And so the question will be, well, what does that mean? We don't know for sure. But when you experience the Lord's life, it is so far beyond what the world calls life that you could lose the world. The Lord says, don't fear the one that could destroy the body. If he destroys the body, the world will say the guy died. But destroying the body doesn't mean you die. It just means you go from this particular realm into a much, much higher realm. And again, we can't really comprehend that, but we just recognize that it's true. But the thing is that worldly worship, which is some kind of idolatry, will give you a feeling of having life. When this young guy follows the lure of this woman who's dressed like a prostitute, he thinks, I'm going to get a better life than I've already got. What does luring do? It invites you to come into something even better than what you already have. You know, your life will be greater. It'll be more fulfilling and more enjoyable or something.
Allures to get your interest and to entice you to come this direction.
Well, you can see that everything in the world is made that way. Why do military soldiers wear uniforms with stripes and badges and gold leaves and all that kind of stuff? Why do they do that?
It's a designation of rank.
Well, why? Well, sure it does, but why is it made so attractive looking and colorful why do guys want to have these stripes on their arm?
They don't want to. That's...
Yes, they do. Have you ever been in the military? You can long. I want another stripe on my arm. Yeah. Why? Pride. And why do they have a ceremony? Why do they give medals out and something to pin on? You see these big shots at all these political meetings. They got stripes all over. Russians, those guys, they the whole front of the shirts. What's all that about? You know, just to show how great they are, how important they are. And the more of them you have on you, the greater you are.
It's like long tassels.
Yeah. And this thing called pride is a terrible, powerful thing, you know. But that idea of a sales attitude, you deserve this, is nothing but attached to your pride, isn't it? Mm-hmm. If they said, there was one guy advertised store as so-and-so's pretty good grocery. Pretty good. What does pretty good mean? You know, when we say something's pretty good, what does that mean?
There's something better. There's something worse.
Yeah. It's like saying, oh, that's okay. Yeah. But
okay, groceries.
If you say something is okay, the very next word is but, isn't it? Yeah. That's okay, but it's something else would be a lot better, you know.
When I buy avocados,
yeah,
you know, they feel and look good on the outside.
Yeah.
But you cut them open and they're rotten.
Yeah, you never know.
And it's like, oh, man.
So anyway, this whole thing, the reason why the Proverbs are written, you know, the entire Bible, in fact, is not written to the pagan world. It's written to the Lord's people. All the directions, all the, you know, what the Jews call the mitzvahs they interpret it mean commandments. It's not a commandment, it's an opportunity. A better word is an opportunity, or an opportunity, or an instruction. They're all written to the Lord's people. The Bible does not have one word to say to unbelievers.
I like your comment that says, if you don't believe in God, it's best not to read the Bible.
Yeah. Yeah, because all it'll do is it'll just give you a sense of self-righteousness. Just like the woman in the story. She did her fellowship offering, but all it did for her was make her feel good enough.
It said that she something about her vows. What was that?
She had
fulfilled her vows.
Yeah. So,
and in the very act of what she was doing, she was breaking a vow.
So it's like
the most important vow.
Yeah.
As far as my relationship with God, I'm in good shape. I'm okay. I'm covered.
Today I've fulfilled my vows.
I'm covered. So my religious duties are done with. Now it's time to have fun.
So here's the end of it. So it says, now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. He's already laid this whole thing out. It says, do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Mm-hmm. Her slain are a mighty throng.
Yes.
What's a throng?
A great crowd of people.
A swarm of people.
Throng, yeah.
Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death.
Yes. So the whole concept here, when he says, who are my sons? Who's that?
Anybody who's listening.
Yeah. No.
Well, his
tells his sons of them, but it's the Lord's people.
Yeah.
He said, my son, those are born out of me. So it's the Lord speaking to his people, and they listen, my sons. Don't you do what that foolish man does, which went after the lure of the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that mean that everybody who attends a typical church meeting is always wrong?
No.
No, it doesn't mean that. There are many people. Does it mean that everybody who wears a prayer shawl is wrong? Does it mean that everybody who prays the Lord's Prayer are they wrong? No, not all. Because all the things that she said she did, she made a fellowship offering, she had vows that she fulfilled. What's wrong with a fellowship offering?
No.
What's wrong with making vows to God?
Nothing.
That she did the right thing, but it wasn't an inward thing, it was an outward thing, only done for selfish purpose. So you can do anything that's related to worshiping God if it's done from the heart. That's what's important. But many people, they say, they like to call themselves church goers.
Mm-hmm.
Church going people are good people.
Mm-hmm.
And what is a church goer? Somebody who goes to most of the time in our world, a Sunday meeting. If you're a Seventh-day Adventist, you go to a Saturday meeting. If you're a Jew, you go to a Shabbat synagogue. Mm-hmm. So they go to church. What do they do the rest of the week?
Whatever they want.
Whatever they want to do. So how many times have we said, what day do you worship God on? Today is the name of the day.
Here and now.
Yeah. What time of day do you do it? Now. Where do you do it? Here. And I've said this, it really shocks people.
What church do you go
Or
to?
I say, can you worship God on Sunday? The answer is no. What? Can you worship God on Saturday? The answer is no. Can you worship God in Anchorage? The answer is no.
It's no, because you're presuming to narrow it down.
Yeah. God meets with us on Sunday, or God is in Anchorage, or God is on Saturday, or God's in Jerusalem. You can't worship God in Jerusalem. Remember the Samaritan woman?
Yeah.
She said to the Lord, our father, the Samaritan, said you got to worship here in Samaria. You Jews say you got to go to Jerusalem. Who's right? What's his answer? Neither. They're both wrong. You can't worship God in Samaria, and you can't worship God in Jerusalem. Because the minute you do that, you're saying God does only this. He meets here, or at that place, or at that time.
Doesn't he say you worship God in your heart?
Yeah, in spirit and in
In
truth.
yeah.
So the whole concept, now I said, if you are in Anchorage, can you worship God?
Yes.
But it has nothing to do with being in Anchorage. That's just where you happen to be.
It's just here.
If you're in an airplane halfway between here and Seattle, can you worship God? Yes, you can. But can you worship God in an airplane? You see what happens? A very subtle change of the word. If you worship God in an airplane, it means you got to be in an airplane if you're going to worship God. Or you got to be in Anchorage if you're going to worship God. That's where you worship God. Or you got to be on Sunday after 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's where you worship God. If the minute you do that, you put God into your box, you see. But when we recognize the truth, you can't pin a location or a time or a date onto God. You just can't do that. And what happens with the religious system, see, they say, well, we're churchgoers. We do that every Sunday, and we've done it. So now that we've done that, I have fulfilled my vows. I have fellowship offering left over. Let's come in and have fun. I've already done the religious thing. Can you see where that same lure? Now, that doesn't mean that everybody that goes and shows up at a Baptist church over here is out of order. But if they think that's where God is, you see what's happened?
Yeah, so I like to think when I was younger, I saw this. I went to church. Everybody's so nice, and they sing, and they meet, and they greet, and the church gets out. You get into the parking lot, and people are cutting you off. And
Oh, yeah.
It's like, that's over now. I'm back to
Exactly.
worshiping myself and doing what I want to do. And then also, it's interesting, in Turnagain, in the earlier days, we met in another church building, so we met after they were all done. So it was always in the afternoon, and we're sort of still doing that. And so a lot of people, well, let's do this in the morning so we have the rest of the day to ourselves.
Yeah.
It does cut between, like, I go to church at 12, and then
I don't go to church ever at any time, but you do.
The church building at 12,
Okay.
get it set up, and I usually leave around 5. Well, the whole days, there's not much time before or after, so I just give the whole day to the Lord.
Well, that's the best thing to do anyway. So what do you want to do the rest of the day anyway? So here's.
But you know what I'm saying.
I know
but there
exactly.
was a bunch of people in the congregation. Well, can't we meet early? You know.
Yeah.
And we never did. Even when we had our own building, it was still.
It's almost like saying to God, "Look, your meeting with you interferes with my life.
Yeah.
Let's set it for a more convenient time so I can
Yeah.
get more time for
Let's
myself."
keep it down to an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about those congregations that have like 3 services in the morning and 1 at night, Wednesday service, and if you don't attend at least one Sunday and Wednesday,
Yeah.
you could be excommunicated.
Yeah.
You're not. If you don't come to where we are and worship the way we want you to, then you're not good enough for God.
I remember hearing some well-intended preacher. I'm sure he meant well, but he's doing his thing on a Sunday, and right across the street there was a boat show going on, and there was a lot of people over at the boat show, and this preacher said, "Those people over there ought to be over here where we are, because if you're at the boat show on Sunday,
Yeah.
for all to say, you are a pagan.
Yeah.
The good people are over here." What was the matter with that? What was he doing?
He was
He
putting
forgot
himself
about here, now,
better
and today.
than the people,
Yep. He was
and he
worship-
wasn't following Christ.
He was
and going
now,
to where
if
the
they had a
people
boat
were.
show on
Yeah.
Saturday or on Friday night, that's okay. But Sunday, this is the holy day. When did Sunday become the holy day?
Well,
Sunday's
Constantine, maybe?
Sunday's just Yom Reshon, first day of the week. That's all it is. There's nothing special about it. It is not the holy day. What is the holy day anyway?
Every day is the Lord's
Today,
day.
it's called
Today.
Come to the
As
Lord
long
while
as
it's called
today.
today.
Mhm.
Today doesn't mean Sunday. It doesn't mean Saturday. It doesn't mean any other time. It means now, right here. This is the day that says, "This is the day the Lord has made." What day is this day that He has made? You know. Well, the day that was written, that's in Psalms, and I think it may be in Psalm 118. But that's called the last psalm of the Hallel. Hallel means praise. Hallelujah means to praise to God, or praise our God. So when they did their Passover, the Lord did the Passover with His disciples. It says at the very end of it, they sang a psalm, and then they went out into the night to the Mount of Olives. And the psalm they would sing would be 118.
That was the other morning going to work. The sun was coming up. Remember that thing
Yeah,
I
I
sent
saw
you?
that. Yeah,
You were gone. Were you down south?
I got that from.
Look
yeah.
at God's handiwork and glory. That just made me think of that sun coming up. What a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Too bad that number was in the dash.
Yeah.
Well, that psalm, though, 118, was a psalm probably that they sang because that's a psalm that they would sing at the end of Passover Seder. And all it does, it says, "This is the day the Lord's made. Let's be glad and rejoice in it." So what was going to happen on that day? It's Passover.
The killing of the lamb, isn't it?
Yeah. What do they do on Passover? They sacrifice a lamb, and that opens the gate for salvation. So it says, "This is the day the Lord's made." It's not a matter of what day it shows up on a calendar.
Mm-hmm.
It's the day the Lord offers salvation to everybody. So could you sing that song on a Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
Would it have any meaning on Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
How about on Friday?
Yeah.
How about on Sunday? Does it have anything to do with a calendar date?
No.
So what day is the day of salvation?
Today.
Today. And every day of our life is today, isn't it? So the minute you put a calendar date as the day we meet with God, you've limited God to that day. Or the minute you put a location, you limited God to that, or a time of day, or any of that kind
We're
of stuff.
back to Numbers again.
Yeah.
The first day.
Yeah.
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 And
All comes back around.
you know, there's so much to learn, but the world has 1,000 things to teach you, and every one of them is a way. And even though there's nothing particularly wrong. Is there anything wrong with owning a motorcycle? I mean, that's not an immoral thing. But you could make your motorcycle into a god, couldn't you? And anything that draws you away from truth is an idol. And how many times the Lord warned against idolatry, you know? And yet
So do you probably do, I know I do, maybe you do too, that sometimes our hobbies, I don't say that I don't make them an idol, but they sure take up a lot of your time.
Yeah.
I
Usually
just-
people live for them. You know?
I bowed down to those things for years, just make them into idol. No doubt about it. And family. My grandson Sam and his wife Kathleen, they live down there. They moved out of California, but they got
They moved down to
they moved up
Nikiski?
to eastern Washington. No, they're not here. They're in Washington. They're Dale's
Yeah.
second son. Anyway, they got 2 little boys. Now these people, they're great folks, but they're liberal socialists. And they just literally worship those boys. Every year, they send us a calendar which is filled with photographs of these kids. They send us coffee cups with all these kids on it all the time. Now that's good. I'm glad that and they treat their kids very well. They teach them well. They're smart kids. But they made the kids into an idol. They bowed to them. If anything was happening to those kids, I think they'd just die. It would kill them. They couldn't, because for one thing, they have no concept of who God is, so they can't offer him to God for his protection.
I see the problem with parents that the kids rule the roost and run the show. They're so into the kids that the kids have the authority.
Yeah.
You know, it sort of
Well, these
messes things up.
folks do a very good job of raising the kids. The kids are nice, they're polite kids, and extremely smart.
Do they know God?
I don't know their heart,
Yeah.
but they have no time. They never mention God. They have no interest in that. They're just interested in things of the world. They don't go into bad stuff, but they're very socialistic and liberal in their political ideas. I'm sure they vote Democrat, but their heart attitude is, we're going to be nice, good citizens. We're going to teach our children to be good citizens, smart, talented, everything. But there's, you go back to the story of what we call the nativity story. Here's Mary and Joseph coming into Bethlehem, and they need a place to stay. Now, they go to the inn, which would normally be when you go to some other town, you'd stay at the inn. What was the problem?
There was no place
There was no place. Why not?
because it was full.
Why was the inn full?
Well, there was a lot of people visiting because they were.
Why
going
were
to
they
census.
there?
They're going to the counting.
Because of Caesar's edict, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has to go back to their hometown and register for, they call it for the census, but it would mean more taxes. So everybody who was born in Bethlehem has to come back there. That's their home state, including Joseph. Now, so they come there. Now, is the innkeeper a bad man? What's he doing?
Just renting out his place.
He's running his business. Nothing immoral about that. And it wasn't his fault that all these people were there. Why are they there? Because that's what Caesar's. what's the word? Enforce. You have to go there. So they're there. They're there at the government rule. It's not the innkeeper's fault. He's only doing what he does.
He's probably having a pretty good day, actually.
He's making money, and there's nothing wrong with that. None of that has anything to do with the innkeeper being wrong. But the innkeeper had no room for the Lord. Now, that doesn't mean he rejected the Lord. Did you think he had any idea who that was trying to get in? Joe? They're just some young folks she's pregnant. Stranger who never met them, don't know who they are, but I'm sorry, but there's no room. If he had known who that really was, if he had known, he could have said, look, there's no rental rooms. You take my place, I'll go out and sleep in the stable.
Yeah.
You can have mine. This is the best room in the place. It's yours. If he had known. But he didn't know that. So can we blame the innkeeper for their problem? But whether he said blame or not, no matter what he's like, if there's no room for the Lord in his life, what do we ever hear about that guy again? Do we know anything about the innkeeper? There's only one thing we know about him. He owned the place, and he had no room for the Lord. That's all. There was nothing. He didn't say anything. He didn't do anything evil. He didn't commit some crime. He wasn't cheating at people. But there was just no room in his life for the Lord. And I see that in these young folks like my grandson. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing, but there's no room for God.
Yeah.
They got room for everything else. Everybody in town was there. Plenty of room for all that. I mean, not plenty, but each one had a place. And their life, the innkeeper's inn was full. He didn't have one more place to put anybody in his inn. So his life was completely filled with what Caesar ordered, is what it comes down to, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I also think about how things work. God always has a purpose.
It's because you're a mechanic, man.
Oh, yeah.
And Joseph and Mary didn't get there in a rightly time, because if they got there early, they'd have a spot in the end. But
Yeah.
God didn't want that. God wanted Christ to be born in the least of the least. It's the whole concept
Yeah.
It's also
of
interesting.
who he is.
It's also a matter of time, you know. Like we started out talking about ordinal and cardinal.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Greek, there happens to be a word called kairos that's different than chronos, because we know what a chronometer is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Your
It's a
chronometer
clock, yeah.
is your watch.
Yeah.
That you keep on, you know, 'cause
Chronological.
It keeps
Timepiece, yeah.
it keeps scientific time, you know. Tick, tick, tick. But birth is not on chronos. Birth is on kairos. You know, like the Gospel of Mark starts out when the time was
When it was
fulfilled,
the right time, yeah.
when the time was ready, and that's what it was. It's like when did Christ come into the world? Well, when it was time.
Yeah.
Because that's kairos, not chronos.
Right.
Well,
and his time is perfect.
Exactly.
And
he might not come when you want him, but he's right on
like,
time.
it's like a stage, and each person has their own part and God has planned this whole thing from beginning to end.
Yeah, and back to that business about the innkeeper and stuff. If the innkeeper would have made room for the Lord and given him his place, then we would say the Lord benefited from what the innkeeper did. Now, what have we ever done at all that benefits God, that helps God, or that makes His life more
Well, we give him
fulfilled?
our time and talent and treasures.
Does that make him more fulfilled? Is
No,
God? Is
he
God?
doesn't need any
Is
of
God
that.
improved by
No.
anything that I do,
No.
or is He lessened by anything I don't do? So what is that first lesson in the nativity? Is that The Lord came into the world without the aid of Caesar or any of the operation, or with the innkeeper, who was a perfectly reasonable man. None of that had anything to do with what the Lord came to do something that the world did not contribute anything to. In fact, it was all for the world's benefit. Nothing was done for the Lord's benefit. And so he began his very life in this earth as a sacrifice. He sacrificed the minimal pleasure of living in the world at his birth. What child benefits by being born in and this was not like have you seen a nice, quiet, clean little place with little cuddly lambs laying around. It was a stable for a inn.
It was born in a feeding trough.
Yes, and when these people, by everybody who came to Bethlehem at that time, was angry. Why would they be angry?
Because they're being counted for.
Well, the only reason they're here is because of a government rule which is made to make their life harder to live, raise their taxes, and in fact they had to interrupt their life in order to do this, and it cost them time and money and effort, and now they've traveled a long ways, some of them with animals, donkeys or horses or whatever, and now they're spending money at an inn. And so they bring these out. They've just traveled across many miles of desert. How would you like to sleep all night with a donkey that's just walked 40 miles, Stinky and sweaty.
Oh, man.
The floor's covered with horse manure and stuff like that. It's a stinky, dirty place. The guys are bringing their donkeys in, complaining, cursing each other and cursing the whole situation. It's dark in there. They don't have any lights or anything, maybe a lantern or something. But it's just not a happy place. And these modern nativity scenes probably don't even come close to reality. They're not pretty little nice places. They're ugly, dirty, filthy places full of angry people.
Well, you couldn't sell them that if they were dirty.
And, if you look at an animal feed trough right after a bunch of hungry animals have been eaten out of it, what's it full of? Slobber and slime, and maybe one of them stepped in, who knows? I mean, and then you're going to put your brand new baby in that. It's not a nice, and Norris' little song, the little Lord Jesus asleep on the hay, and it sounds so pleasant and cuddly. If you'd have seen it, there would nothing to write a song about. I mean, it's an ugly, dirty, filthy-looking thing.
What's a swaddling cloth? Is that a special baby cloth or just a rag?
Well,
it's probably big enough to wrap that baby in.
They wrapped them up in it, and a lot of I have looked that up. Some of them say it was the kind of cloth you'd wrap a dead body in.
Whoa!
Wrappings for a dead body, and that could be too, because the Lord entered into the place of death. That's when he came. He came here for death, and when he entered into the world, he entered into death. So it could well be that the cloth that wrapped around would be the type of a cloth you'd wrap a dead body in. And it would not be something that you'd make a royal robe out of, because what do you do with after you've wrapped the dead body? You put it in a tomb and you're done with that. Are you ever going to use that piece of cloth again for anything,
Yeah.
So it's really a kind of a wrapping for death. So that could be what it was about. I don't know. But at any rate, there's nothing in that whole story that would be something you would admire how it looked. It was ugly and it was dirty.
How does that come out?
It's crystal clear, beautiful.
Yeah.